Spent in a miserable way.
U.S. news opinion: Blackface is the tip of the iceberg. The New York Times. The structural problems we need to solve lie at the roots of American society. Opinion columnist. Over the last month, we learned just how much racism is too much to sustain a career in American politics. It took almost 16 years for House Republicans to reprimand Steve King of Iowa for his frequent expressions of explicit racism. By the catalyst, compare that slow-moving response with the quick dismissal of Michael Ertel, the Republican Secretary of State in Florida, who resigned the same day that photos of him in blackface were revealed to the public. They show Ertel with, after the discovery of a racist image on the medical school yearbook page of Ralph Northam, the governor of Virginia, has been almost as swift as the world now. Nonetheless, Democrats, including Terry McAuliffe, the previous governor of Virginia, the state's two senators, Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, its African-American legislative caucus and most of its congressional delegation, as well as multiple 2020 presidential candidates who are asking him to resign, which would allow the Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax to take his place. Fairfax. Put these examples together and you can begin to discern a standard in American politics. Lawmakers can get a pass for almost anything short of open allegiance to racist ideologies or the explicit use of racist imagery. There is a logic to this dynamic, even as it produces absurd results, like from a Virginia Republican Party that fielded for Senate just over 3 months ago, or from a Republican National Committee that otherwise stands firmly behind President Trump. Put simply, there is a plausible in theory, at least Orris's reading of King's preoccupation with the preservation of Western civilization, or the president's belief, like Haiti, whose residents should be kept off American soil. By contrast, the most popular form of entertainment in 19th century America, which continued well into the 20th, blackface minstrelsy, was defined by its caricature of and gross hostility toward black Americans. In the minstrel show, painting oneself harkened back to traditional popular celebrations, and to paint oneself as a black person, given American realities at the time, was to throw reason to the winds, the historian David Rodiger wrote in his 1991 book. He notes later that, in other words, blackface is so thoroughly associated with the worst of American racism that we should expect immediate condemnation of politicians and public figures who have any association with it, even if it's a decades-old office. But this high bar for sanction, essentially a standard for racism, is also a problem. It treats if racism is principally a problem of power and resources, view of race hierarchy and the denial of life, liberty and opportunity to blacks and other non-whites, then our political culture ought to expand the offices that earn the kinds of swift condemnation we've seen over the last few days. Voter suppression. American society is still structured by cola. Your health. The Times is committed to publishing to the editor. Wednesday. Like to follow the New York Times opinion section on and
raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.